What is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And today we're having a look at the supposedly part 1 of the anniversary. I believe that there's going to be more coming, but we're going to have a look at this Sugo-Fest. I did briefly talk about it in an earlier video where we briefly went over it, but we do have a little bit more details. And look, as of the recording of this video, we don't even know the rates for each individual unit, so some of the things that we talk about in this video may be invalid when the Sugo-Fest goes live, but we can take some information from previous banners which have very similar structures to get a bit of an idea as to how this banner is going to go moving forward. So, shout out to Captain Pappy for creating this little infographic. Makes it a bit easier to talk about each of the banners rather than looking at it in game. But for part 1 of the Sugo-Fest, this is what you need to know. With part 1, every legend is pullable except for one, I think. Well, aside from the TM and the Kizuna and all those units. Those units are obviously not pullable. But all generic legends are pullable. All anniversary units are pullable. All Super Sugos are pullable. The only non-boosted or non-pullable unit you can get is Jack. The Jack from the previous pre-anniversary celebration, he is not on this banner, which is kind of a shame because that unit's actually pretty good. I would like to get that unit. But aside from that, all generic legends, all Super Sugos, all anniversaries are pullable. Now, despite all of those characters being pullable, some of them are going to be considered rate boosted. So these are the characters that you'll have a much higher chance at getting. So first of all, you've got like this random array of characters, including, you know, the 2 new units, Luffy, Yamato, Oden, Toki. Anniversary Ace is also a rate boosted unit. Rayleigh Gaban is huge as well. And we'll go through, I've actually edited this infographic just a little bit to give you guys a bit of an idea, especially for newer players, as to characters you probably want to target, or characters that you probably wouldn't want to hit as often, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. You've got a limited Super Sugo only step, which does have these characters here. I'm not too sure how this is going to go in terms of the rates, but all 4 of these units are absolutely amazing, so there's no real bad unit here. But I suppose if you're the type of player that's been playing for a while, you mainly just want to get the new unit, which makes sense. But if you don't have dupes for these units, like personally, I've only ever pulled 1 dupe of the Dex Super Tandem Luffy. I would love to get this guy maxed out because he's actually very, very good. And of course, you've got all the Super Sugos and anniversary exclusive characters that are on part 1. Now, of course, the big thing about part 1 is the step ups on this banner are insane. They are really, really good. But they offset that with the fact that, you know, all legends are pullable, and also the fact that if you go all the way to the 30th multi, Luffy and Yamato are not guaranteed. I believe the final multi of part 1 is this limited Super Sugo-Fest step. So over here on the One Piece Treasure Cruise subreddit Discord, shout out to Fate of Muffins, who does a lot of the mathematics behind determining whether banners are worthwhile or not. And of course, he does mention here numbers subject to change when actual rates drop. But this is using data from previous very similar structured Sugo-Fests, so this should line up relatively similar. So the main takeaways from this article is that according to the numbers, part 1 is way better than part 2 and 3, and it's not even close. And look, this is only from the perspective of only interested in the 2 brand new legends. So this is like Oden, Toki, and obviously Luffy and Yamato. So if you're only just looking at potentially pulling those characters, part 1 is the best way to go. However, if you are looking at getting some other characters that are boosted on the banner, that is where things can get a bit shaky, and you may want to wait until those parts are active. And we'll talk more about parts 2 and 3 in a little bit. But you can see here, the average cost for the first copy of the 2 brand new legends is about 428 gems on part 1. So on average, it should take you this many gems to pull one of the guaranteed new legends on part 1. However, it will require you to get at least 600 on average, and again, this is averages, to hit the unit on part 2 and 3. But remember, this is the combined rate of both Luffy, Yamato, as well as Oden and Toki. So, you know, if you really just want to get Luffy, Yamato, and you don't care about Oden and Toki, then this actually might not be the best way to go. You probably actually want to wait for part 2 for Luffy, Yamato, because obviously they're guaranteed on that banner eventually. and also part 2 and 3 are going to be disappearing after, like, at an earlier date compared to part 1, so do keep that in the back of the mind. So back over here on the edited infographic, I've kind of just cancelled out characters. So if you're like a newer player or a returning player, these are characters that you probably don't want to get your hands on, the ones that are crossed out. You probably don't care about them that much. But if you are a new or a returning player, the characters that are not crossed out are characters that help you out in various pieces of content and are definitely worth getting. And while a lot of people may disagree about the Whitebeard, you know, Whitebeard is just not very good in a lot of content. If he's boosted in content, Whitebeard's actually very good. But I think generally speaking, the other characters on this list will help you more on your account compared to what Whitebeard can do. A lot of these characters have very useful mechanics in their captains or their specials, and these are the characters that you probably want to look out for. And then of course you got the fact that you have all the Super Sugos and Annie characters on this banner is the big draw, and the steps are actually really good on part 1. But remember, you have to think that, you know, the chances of you landing the non-rate boosted characters is very low. That's why I would say always look at this list. Even though all the other legends are pullable, these are the ones that you're going to see most often. Moving on over to part 2 of the Sugo-Fest, this is where Luffy and Yamato are guaranteed after 30 multis, and this is also where the step-ups for part 2 and 3 are way worse compared to the step-ups on part 1. On part 1, they really promote the fact that you're getting a legend guaranteed on the 11th poster almost every multi. Like, it's very common. You're going to get lots and lots of additional reds. However, they offset that with part 2, obviously guaranteeing you Luffy and Yamato, and the fact that there's more honed in boosted characters, where the list of legends that you see here, these are all the legends that you can pull. These are the only legends you can pull on part 2. So this does really hone in on specific units. Now, while there are a lot of old units, which are probably really good for a lot of people, there's also some mid-tier characters that you just do not want to pull. Is some recency stuff, you know, with obviously Legend Killer is a really nice one too. And you've got access to some other Super Sugos with Uta and Roger and Whitebeard, which are huge assets. Then you've obviously got Oden. Oden's a really good character for Pirate Rumble, and also just a pretty solid unit overall, especially when you get him super evolved to 6-star plus. With the anniversary exclusive Sabo, who is, I think out of all the anniversary exclusives, I think Sabo probably is the best one. But then you've obviously got Zoro and K-Dad, which are really solid units too. So really, really nice stuff here for sure. You got the limited and the super limited step. So if you go all the way to a super limited step, this is what you should be expecting. And this is a really good step up. However, the fact that Sasaki's here, he really does taint this pool of characters, because Sasaki is really not that good, unfortunate as that is. So now we're going to look at the edited version of part 2. These are the characters that I've crossed out that if you're a new or a returning player, these are the characters you probably don't want to get. The leftover characters are really useful in a lot of ways. I almost crossed out Lucy, but he is actually still pretty good and has good synergy with Luffy and Yamato as a character too. But you got Frankie, who's a really cool unit too. Rayleigh is a nice unit to help you clear content if you're running like a fighter cerebral team. Being able to go through defensive effects just means you don't have to bring characters on your crew to get around it. It is a useful character, but doesn't see a lot of play, but a very, very niche unit. You know, obviously you got Vivi Rebecca for a fantastic captain, Dogstorm for speed farming, Oden's a solid unit, Frankie with his great captain ability. You've got the Zoro and Sanji, you know, they're just easy to use and have a good special. And then you've got the exclusive units, the Super Sugos and the Annie units. All of them here you definitely want to get your hands on eventually. But obviously the fact that Luffy and Yamato are guaranteed here is the big draw, and I think it's the main reason why this banner is really good, to be honest. And, you know, if you are looking just to get your hands on Luffy and Yamato, you should probably just do your pulls on part 2. So finally, we can have a look at part 3, which is essentially the exact same as part 2 of the Sugo-Fest, with the obvious difference of Luffy and Yamato not being here and instead being replaced by Oden and Toki. Now this time around, you got access to different batches of exclusive units, with the Super Sugos going to Kaido vs Yamato, Dex Luffy, Dex Final Tap Law, and Goldie Roger, and the Annie units of Oden and Toki, which is confirmed to be an Annie unit, as well as Luffy and the waifus. Now in terms of the rest of the batch here, Legend Carrot's a nice call there, you know, obviously speed farming and going through defensive effects, same with Cat Viper. We talked about Dogstorm with part 2. Dofi's a really interesting one. Hiyori is so freaking good and helps in so many scenarios, such an incredible unit. And Hawkins is a really good unit too, and there's a couple of good units along the way, but again, lots of mediocre units that you don't want to pull either. The thing about this batch that's interesting is that there are a lot of units here that don't have super evolutions yet and level limit breaks, which can drag drastically change the overall value of this banner, because when you look back in hindsight, when you have a look and they finally receive, you know, super evolutions or level limit breaks, this might actually be one of the best parts ever. But until those units get the buffs that they deserve, you know, we got to take it at face value. Unfortunately, the limited step goes down to this, and then the super limited step leaves you with this. Now, to be honest, if you're just looking at it in a vacuum with this pool of units, I mean, I just can't really recommend pulling on part 3. I don't feel like there's enough value to actually spend your gems on part 3 of this Sugo-Fest, unfortunately. So in terms of characters that I've cancelled out to make it a little bit easier for you guys, this is what I've done. Now, I did put Borsalino as a character that's actually worthwhile, mainly because he's so good in Rumble. V2 Big Mom, because she is about to get her Super Evolution, and I feel like she'll probably be good. Barto Cavendish is nice with his Super Evolution. Carrot, obviously very good. You know, the Versus units are nice. Dofi's Captain is fantastic, good special too, good synergy with all of the powerful driven units. Cat Viper is fantastic. The special of Kinemon Denjiro is still really strong, and then obviously the exclusive units and the 2 units at the top here, Hawkins and Hiyori, are really good still. A lot of the, I mean, you could technically not cancel out this Brook, because this Brook is very, very good for Grand Voyage versus Buggy. At the same time though, you don't necessarily need this Brook if you build the right team. And we're looking at it from the perspective of a beginner player or a newer player, returning player. Potentially Brook might not even be on your radar. Like, clearing Grand Voyage might be one of the last things you want to do anyway. It is endgame content at the end of the day. But in terms of the units that are pullable here, it's actually not terrible. But I think that in terms of the anniversary and, you know, the exclusiveness of characters, you know, if you don't have all of these units, then it's probably not a bad idea. But at the same time, we just don't know what's to come for the rest of the anniversary, for the rest of May or the rest of June. And we know that there is likely going to be more stuff to come. So you do have to take that on board when you're looking at where you want to be pulling here. And I do honestly feel that if you are looking to pull on any part of this Sugo-Fest, you know, part 1, maybe not go to 30 multis on part 1. That's probably not the best idea. But, you know, because the steps are so good on part 1, potentially just doing 5 to 10 multis on part 1, that'll net you a lot of stuff, including potentially getting some of the new rare recruits, because the rare recruits, as we've seen with the Film Red celebration, whenever they released a batch of generic rare recruits and then they released like the second part of Film Red and the third part of Film Red, these rare recruits were not pullable on those future parts. So if you want to get these rare recruits, you have to pull on this banner in some capacity. Now, I think that doing, you know, 5 to 10 on part 1 will net you a lot of good stuff. But if you're looking to just get Luffy and Yamato, I feel like part 2 is probably the best way to go. And it makes the most sense financially in terms of a gem perspective. It just makes a lot of sense to do that. But pretty much that's going to wrap it up from me. So thank you so much for watching the video. I really hope that this video helps you guys out, and I'm wishing you guys the best of luck on your Sugo-Fest pulls. Of course, we are going to be live streaming my pulls as well over on twitch.tv/Toadskii. Link is always down below in the video description of every single video. We're going to be live to do pulls on this Sugo-Fest, and we're also going to be doing the Pirate King Adventures game mode as well once we are finished with our pulls. So hopefully you come out to the stream when we start. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and if you guys did, make sure to leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.